he's one of the top guys in the portal, right? I think we talked about Connor Weigman, Castellanos, a couple more players. But I mean, this is the guy. You can tell that this is the guy that we want. You've got to get him in early. I would assume we will have a quarterback, whether it's Miller Moss or somebody else, because I think they'll fly somebody else in quickly if he decides to go to Louisville and
Right.
chooses Louisville. I think we'll still have somebody probably by like Monday or Tuesday, I would guess. But you've got to get this guy in first. He's your piece. He's the reason you tell other people in the transfer portal, look what we just got. We just got this guy. We have a slew of wide receivers right now. We've got a decent offensive line. We need you. So you need this piece first to really make that selling point in the transfer portal to the other guys.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into Mizzou That's Who, your podcast for Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson. We got a jam-packed week episode for you, as it is it's a good time to be a Missouri Tiger. Missouri does take down number one Kansas in the border. We'll talk a little bit about that. Transfer portal heating up. Missouri gets assigned to their bowl game. Volleyball playing really well right now too. I believe in the Sweet 16 of volleyball. Things are going well there as we enter the winter season. The winter sports seasons are starting up as well. Women's basketball, I think, on a little hot streak of their own as well. So look, lots of good things happening. But I guess, Maggie, off the top, before we get into what the bad news was of the day we were recording this podcast, how are you doing? How was your week?
Pretty good. It was a jam-packed weekend. We talked a little bit before the show. I had a lot going on in the Twitter sphere. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw what was going on. Thank you for the support. I also muted the thread, so if you did send support, I didn't probably see it, but appreciate you anyways. But no, it was a good weekend for Mizzou sports, most definitely.
Mute function is probably the best function in all of social media. It is. I use the mute button a whole lot, but yeah, I mean, some people just take this stuff too seriously sometimes, is really what it comes down to.
Just a little bit. We're all here to talk ball. And we're all here doing, we love sports. That's why we're here. That's why listeners are here. Nobody forces you to listen to anybody that you don't want to listen to. So
For sure.
We appreciate you being here and listening to us, though.
100%. So here's the news that we need to get to off the top. We're recording this on Tuesday. Tuesday morning, it was reported, I believe Hayes Fawcett was the first one to report this out there, that Nwaneri is reported to enter the transfer portal. He is expected to enter the transfer portal, I should say. At the time of recording, it's not officially done. Obviously, with the red tape that requires entering the transfer portal, there could be some time before he actually shows up there. But it is expected on all accounts that he will enter the transfer portal. Obviously, highly touted 5-star prospect. I believe On3 had him as the number one player in the country last year when he did commit to the University of Missouri. Didn't see a whole lot of time on the field this year, Maggie, and there was actually, if I got to go double check this, but I think there was even another true freshman defensive end that saw a little more time than he did in terms of snap counts. Thoughts on the move overall as Nwaneri is expected to enter the transfer portal?
It's kind of interesting because when we heard that he was going to retain his red shirt, I wasn't sure. Like, I kind of had like a weird feeling about that. And I was like, is he retaining his red shirt for good reasons, which would be obviously he can, stay around a little bit longer at Mizzou? Or is it because he wants to keep that eligibility? I don't know. Obviously, they're not going to release that information. I'm not really surprised that much when you look at the transfer portal and kind of what it's done and the players that have been in it. And especially with the fact that his high school coach is now at Nebraska, there's a lot of, hearsay about the whole Mozzie situation. And it's been that way
since the beginning.
Since the beginning, everybody is like, he's in his head. He's telling them what to do. OU, Mizzou, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Like the portal giveth and the portal taketh away, right? So it's hard to be really upset about a player who you haven't really even gotten to see that much. Now, if I was like South Carolina, and we're talking about like Dylan Stewart here, who's like one of the best freshmen and has played, and you're feeling a little bit different. You're like, why do you want to leave? Like we just did all of this and are in a great position. But with a player we've not really seen that much, it's hard to be that upset.
I agree. I do think that this is. I would be more upset if we saw maybe a little bit more than what we did this year, right? Because Maggie, I think you make a really good point. I believe Stewart even negotiated a deal to stay at South Carolina. I know there's some people out there that are like
$1.5 million or something.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
There's some people uncomfortable with that language of negotiating a deal to stay in school, but like that's what it is now, and that's just like it is what it is. Like that's what the players are negotiating, and look, players have a lot of leverage and all this too, to stay in school, and they got to do what they can, looking out for themselves. But in terms of Williams Nwaneri, he was already a guy that, when he committed, we were saying, he's going to put on some weight. He's going to, some developmental stuff was already kind of attached to him as he was coming to the University of Missouri. And we didn't see him, as you mentioned, on the field a whole lot. He does retain that red shirt, and it does seem like something that could have sent up some red flags to people that he was so eager to retain that red shirt at the end of the season here. But Missouri wants to play. They are playing the NIL game, right? Like, rightfully so. I think that they are. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Same thing you said with the portal. The portal give it, the portal take it away. If you're going to pay some guys NIL deals, there's going to be some guys you can't pay NIL deals to. And if you have to part ways with people because you just can't come to negotiations with them, that might be the case. And maybe the guy that didn't play in 4 games this year as a true freshman who was a 5-star recruit might have to be the guy that, you can't quite come to a deal with. That might just be the reality of the situation. Who knows? And I know that he hasn't officially entered yet, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Like, he still could come back to Missouri, even if he does enter the transfer portal. Like, that is in the realm of possibility. But from all indications, it seems like this is a situation where it might be more money based than anything, more NIL based than anything.
From what I saw as well, he went to the staff yesterday on Monday and had the conversation with them about it. Now, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know numbers that are thrown out. I remember when all this happened with Caden Green last year, all I heard from OU fans was, it was this much money. It was this. We don't know. We're not going to sit here and pretend like we know. But I'm sure there was some type of negotiation because, like you said, NIL rules the world. So if he's going to get the best deal at Missouri, he might still stay at Missouri.
Right.
But also, like you said, do you give a player that is a risk because you don't know yet? Do you overpay them so much that they don't perform and then you can't pay other players? It's you just don't really know what you should do. I think he's one of the top paid players on Mizzou right now, along with Burden, obviously, and I think Sam Horn was up there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a risk, in my opinion, to go above and beyond for somebody that hasn't quite proved it. Now, when we got Caden Green at Mizzou, from OU as a freshman, he was like one of the top guards in the Big 12. So he had at least proved himself when we gave him, quite a bit of money, as we've heard. But it's just risky, in my opinion. If somebody else wants to pay that big dollar, good for them. Good for their NIL collective.
100%. It does seem like, I don't want it to come across that we're like trashing the kid, right? Because he's choosing not to play for the University of Missouri. That's not what it is. But it just seemed like that there was, I think you would like to see a little bit more from him from this year to feel a little bit more comfortable with saying, okay, yeah, we'll give you a little bit more money. Like, we'll feel more comfortable giving you more money. And maybe that's where it's at, where the University of Missouri is like, yeah, we want to see something a little bit. It is a show me state after all. So like, maybe that's what it is. And I don't want it to come across like that. I hope he goes somewhere and he performs well. And then, Maggie threw out Nebraska because that's where his high school coach is. Oklahoma was in the running for him as well. He could go to Oklahoma, and maybe that just fuels the rivalry even more. Who knows? But wherever he goes, I want to see him do well. Hopefully, he gets in the right situation for himself. Because look, he's got a lot of potential, and that's what we talked about. Like with him, got a lot of potential. We'd love to see this realized. But the transfer portal did open on Monday, the 9th. It opened up. Missouri is hosting a slew of guys on campus. One of those being Miller Moss, a potential quarterback transfer from USC. He was reported, I believe Gabe DeArmond reported this, was first to report that the Missouri did have interest on him. I believe this was last week Gabe reported this, that Missouri did have interest in Miller Moss. And the interest was mutual as he did agree to a visit with them. Somebody else reported that he was going to Louisville as well as a visit. So if Missouri can keep him on campus for these first 2 days of the transfer portal, with visits starting today and running through this week and weekend, and really for these next 4 weeks, I think that the transfer portal's open. If they can lock down Miller Moss as their quarterback, Maggie, I feel I feel a lot better about this offense than I would say if they aren't able to get him.
He's one of the top guys in the portal, right? I think we talked about Connor Wegeman, Castellanos, a couple more players. But, I mean, this is the guy, you can tell that this is the guy that we want. You've got to get him in early. I would assume we will have a quarterback, whether it's Miller Moss or somebody else, because I think they'll fly somebody else in quickly if he decides to go to Louisville and, chooses Louisville. I think we'll still have somebody probably by like Monday or Tuesday, I would guess. But you've got to get this guy in first. He's your piece. He's the reason you tell other people in the transfer portal, look what we just got. We just got this guy. We have a slew of wide receivers right now. We've got a decent offensive line. We need you. So you need this piece first to really make that selling point in the transfer portal to the other guys.
I think so too. And when you start to look at the Missouri offense for 2025, almost said 6. I was getting too far ahead of myself. When you think about the Missouri offense for 2025, they lose a decent amount. Like they're going to lose like Theo Weiss. They're going to lose Luther Burden, Brady Cook. They're 2 top running backs for this year. They lose, I believe, 3 offensive linemen with Armand Mimbo going to the draft as well. I believe that's happened in between shows of us recording. I'm excited to see what he can do in the NFL draft. I love to see him in Kansas City again, truthfully. Chiefs keep having tackle problems. But they've got a lot of question marks on the offensive side of the ball heading into this year. And look, they've recruited well in the past few years, so hopefully they have guys that can step up and play. We mentioned on our last show that they've got a really good running back class coming in. They got some freshmen, I think, that can come in and play right away. The quarterback is going to be the big one. Obviously, the quarterback's been the big one for the last few years of them trying to figure out that question. I think Miller Moss does really mesh well with the play style that Kirby Moore likes with what they want to do, getting the tight ends out there, using motions, all that kind of stuff, and using a good running game as well. I like the fit, truthfully, with Miller Moss and Missouri. I hope they can get it done. That was my guy when he had entered the portal. It was me wishfully thinking, right, that Miller Moss would come to Columbia, but now he's actually reports are that he's on the ground in Columbia and he's visiting with the staff. Drinkins has been really good in the transfer portal. Has really been good in recruiting in general. Love to see that again here to get Miller Moss. The other guy probably is Wegman. Maggie is what you brought up. Like is the other guy, but I think I saw that cast favoring Florida State. So
he's from down there anyways. I don't think that he's even that quarterback that fits our style at all. So I'm not upset about that one.
I don't know how many options there are after Miller Moss. So the thing is, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like the players have all the leverage in these situations. Miller Moss does probably have a lot of leverage in this situation because Missouri is going to need a quarterback for this gap year in between Zollers and before they get to Zollers, I should say. And Miller Moss seems to be that perfect guy. For me, it would be that perfect guy to have that gap year. I don't know how many. Let me double check this. I'm not sure how many years of eligibility Miller Moss still has because I think he is fairly young for the portal, but I'll double check that. Thoughts on just the portal in general? Missouri did have a couple of guys hit the portal, Maggie, as we have recorded. Yeah. I think Bryson Littlejohn hit the portal as well.
Makai Miller.
Yes, Makai Miller hit the portal.
Philip Roche,
he was away from the team for a little bit in the midseason. And it was
So that was
kind of weird. Yeah, nobody really had an answer of like why he was away. Here's
shocking. They don't tell us those things.
Orion Phillips, who was a transfer from Murray State, the punter. He entered the transfer portal as well. They've already got Williams Nwaneri up there. Jack McGarry, interior offensive lineman, has entered the transfer portal. Will Saffreys as well into the portal. Thoughts on any of those guys heading into the portal? Probably Mekhi Miller specifically. Thoughts on him hitting the portal?
I mean, he's the biggest one in my opinion, and
Yeah.
only I understand. I think he's probably a little bit frustrated with the playtime that he was getting. He was really good on third downs. Like he was our Barrett Bannister on third downs. Very reliable. But it's just hard when you're playing behind guys like Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, and then you have guys like Joshua Manning stepping up, and obviously Marquise Johnson as the deep threat. It is hard. I get it. I think he would have gotten more playing time this year or this upcoming year, but he's got to go and do what's best for him. And I think going to a school where he is going to be more of a priority is important.
Miller Moss does only have 1 year of college eligibility left, so he would just be a 1 year guy, which honestly is fine for Mizzou.
Yeah.
Having him as 1 year would be totally fine because you're going to have Zollers there anyway. You just need to get him healthy and everything like that. But in terms of like other players in the transfer portal, I think we've really hit it in terms of like the positionally. Like they are going to need to bring in some defensive backs and some linebackers. That they're going to have to probably hit the portal a little bit harder on the defensive side of the ball. I do feel good about where Missouri is on like the offensive line in terms of their development of offensive linemen to see what some of the guys in-house have at offensive line. I know they're going to have to replace 3 guys, right? Is that what I said earlier?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be 3 guys that they're going to have to replace there. So, I'm going to be curious to see how that offensive line looks. But Malik Murphy, another guy, I just saw that he went into the transfer portal earlier today. I don't know how much he fits Missouri's style. Looking at all these quarterbacks in here, Miller Moss looks like he might be going to Mississippi State, as we talked about last week with Jackson Arnold. Sorry, it's going to Mississippi State. Yeah, sorry, Jackson Arnold going to Mississippi State with his old offensive coordinator. But yeah, I think that Miller Moss is going to be your what do you call it, the golden goose, right? Just going to try to get that's what they got there, and
ticket.
maybe, but look, football's not the only thing that's going on. They obviously had the bowl game announcement in the middle of the game against the Kansas Jayhawks basketball game. I don't know if you heard about that game. That was a pretty big game. Maggie and I will talk about that coming up next. But we got to tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. We're both rocking some black today. We're both back in black. I got the Mighty Mizzou 1961 Orange Bowl shirt on. Maggie, the Fight for Mizzou long sleeve. It's definitely a long sleeve weather day. I'm a little chilly in my short sleeve shirt in my basement here. So, look, weather's turning. They got everything for you over there at Home Field Apparel. Even if you're going to be hanging out in Mizzou Arena, they got stuff for you as well over there. HomeFieldApparel.com. Use code Mizzou24 for 15% off your first order. All kinds of stuff for basketball-specific designs. Look, they got baseball-specific designs as well, football-specific designs, and just general Mizzou stuff as well. They got the great vintage logos on soft blanks. They got great shirts. They got great hoodies. The hoodies are incredible. I like how big the hoods are on the hoodies. I like a good big hood on a hoodie. They've got big hooded hoodies. If you want those, try to say that 5 times fast. Big hooded hoodies. But they've got everything you need at HomeFieldApparel.com. Use that code Mizzou24 for 15% off at checkout. We're going to take a break. After this, we're going to come back and we're going to talk Mizzou KU hoops and where Missouri is going to be playing in their bowl game.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
All right, we found out where Missouri was going to be playing their bowl game. They're headed down to Nashville as a rematch. You know, Maggie, we talked about this. A rematch of the 2020 Music City Bulls are going to be taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah, the game that never happened finally is getting to happen. First, quick thoughts on the matchup.
No, I like it. Obviously, I like the location. We all know bowl games, they don't matter like they used to matter, right? I think even now with the playoffs taking up those Orange Bowls and Fiesta Bowls and all of that, bowl games just aren't what they used to be. That's fine. Because of that, I think we got the best location we could have possibly gotten for Mizzou fans that want to go. It's also like I booked our Airbnb. We're going the 29th through the 31st, coming back, so you kind of miss all the holidays. It's kind of like the best time if you're planning on going.
True.
Nashville's a great time. There's lots of good places to stay. So I don't know. I think if you're going to get a bowl that doesn't mean a lot, a bowl that's close is the best thing you can get.
I agree. I plan on going. I think I even said last week on the show if they got the Music City Bowl, I'd be there taking on an Iowa team that still doesn't have an offense, really.
Their best offensive player.
Yeah.
Like their best offensive player isn't playing, opted out. Their running back, his last name's Johnson, but I can't remember his first name.
Caleb Johnson,
yes.
Yes, he did opt out. Cade McNamara, speaking of people who enter the transfer portal, he entered the transfer portal. He wasn't really playing quarterback though because he had another injury and he's kind of been out for them for the last couple of games. They still beat Nebraska though somehow on a last second field goal. It's crazy that Iowa keeps beating Nebraska. Honestly, it's humorous to see Nebraska move the ball over them, but then they can't score, and then all of a sudden Nebraska will just turn the ball over on their game-winning drive, and then will kick a game-winning field goal. And that's just how it happens in every single game.
Nebraska's such a weird team because when you think about schedules and you think about Mizzou's schedule, and we beat every team that we were really supposed to beat. Obviously, like you look at the beginning of the year and you probably think you should beat South Carolina and probably A&M, but we were massive underdogs at South Carolina, like 13.5 points. So you kind of understand the losses a little bit. Nebraska is so weird because some games they'll dominate, like they dominated Colorado, and then they can Iowa all of a sudden knows how to score whenever they're playing. I mean, kind of score against when they're playing Nebraska. So I don't know. Nebraska's just a weird team. They're not very consistent. And I think in college football these days, like consistency is really important.
Yep. They do make a bowl game, though. They're in the Pinstripe Bowl, I believe. That bowl game, I don't have any respect for that bowl game. I'll be this time. There's no respect for.
Is it still at Yankee Stadium?
Yes.
All I remember from the Pinstripe Bowl is the K-State player saluting when they were in there. I think that might be the only time I've watched it. Was when K-State played, he saluted, and they got after he scored a touchdown, and got him. I don't know, some type of penalty.
Who's in the Pop-Tart Bowl this year?
Ooh, I actually did know this, and now I can't remember. Because I was jealous. I'm like, if you're also gonna play in a no-name bowl, Pop-Tart.
Iowa State and Miami.
So.
That actually might be a pretty decent game. If they play their players, but. What is that, Big 12? I guess it is Big 12 ACC. That is dumb that it's Big 12 ACC. It was that last year, too. Put the SEC in it. SEC has nothing nice.
Yeah. Well, and then we also, because obviously the best bowl outside of the bowl system for the SEC is the Citrus Bowl. Kind of talked about this a little bit last week about how either the Big Ten or the SEC was going to get a lot of teams in, and it turns out that the Big Ten got a few more than the SEC did, but it's so hard to get in those good bowls when teams like Alabama, which I don't care that Alabama got left out, but when teams like Alabama do get left out, because then they fill those bowls. So South Carolina, Alabama filled the little bit better SEC bowls, and then a 9-3 team then has to play. Some people were predicting us to the Liberty Bowl, and I was like, I swear, if they predict us to a bowl as 9-3, the same that they were predicting us to at 6-6 a couple of years ago,
right?
My mind, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. It did kind of throw everything off with the Alabama not making it, which I do agree. I don't care that Alabama didn't win football games. I don't know.
Beat Oklahoma. Don't get killed by them. Who else? Vandy
in Oklahoma. Yeah, beat those guys. Then don't. Yeah. Look, win your games. I'm glad that I understand that the committee kind of set a precedent of you don't really, it doesn't matter who you play, strength of schedule type of deal. But I also like the precedent that the committee set of if you make a conference championship game, you're not going to be punished for losing it. Like, I think that's an important precedent to set. And I don't think that, like, the people who are like, well, strength of schedule doesn't matter. Like, you lost your conference games. Like, those games you lost were conference games.
Alabama didn't lose their non-cons.
Right.
Like that, so that to me didn't matter. I agree to a sense, though. I think if Texas A&M would have beaten Texas and then lost in the SEC championship, that's when it gets a little dicey because then you're looking at a team because Texas A&M has 4 losses right now. So they would only have 3 at that point, but they would have 4 if they would lose in the SEC championship.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand a little bit if it got to that point, but I think where most of the teams were, they were still ranked high enough where they should be in the playoff. The only questionable one is that SMU Alabama thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. We'll just have more years to kind of compile data, I guess, off of this too. So really what they need to do is they need to make a group of 5 playoff and a Power 5 playoff. But
yeah, it honestly might not be a terrible. There's so many things I feel like us as fans. I feel like we could fix the NIL system. We could fix the playoff system. Maybe the
make them employees. Well, that's all you have to do. You just have to make them employees. Done. Fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's. They have to do something. I think eventually they will, but I wish they would have done something before they said go.
Yeah, I think that was part of the NCAA's plan, though. They warned them to flounder in all this and be like, come save us, please. Please come save us, NCAA. I don't know if it's going to happen that way, but.
No, probably. I just think you're going to keep having players leaving for more money. Did you see, speaking of, I mean, I know we were talking about Nebraska a little bit, but that tight end for Nebraska that's played at like 4, Eric Gilbert is leaving Nebraska too. That's just when it just gets a little crazy for me.
Yep. I also love every time somebody hits the transfer portal, it's former 5-star, former 3-star, former 4-star.
4 years ago when they graduated high school.
Like Tom Fernelli tweeted out the meme of like the dog. It says like any college player. And it's like a college player when they hit the transfer portal is like a really buff dog. It's so true though. It's like anytime any player hits the transfer portal, you're just like, well, they're really good. They could probably come to our team and be really, really good. Look, folks, they're in the transfer portal for a reason.
Yeah. Most of the time it's because they're not playing enough. Sometimes it's because they want more money. But a lot of the times it's things in the locker room, right, on the field, as opposed to the money thing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, let's talk about Missouri's big win over Kansas in basketball. Maggie, what was your experience like watching this game? I know that I was an emotional wreck during the whole game because I was scared the whole time that they were going to blow it. And I tried to
feel that way.
You did not feel that way?
No, I said, why would you not?
Oh, no, that makes sense.
Watched it happen in multiple games, you know?
Yeah, and like they literally did it earlier this year with Memphis. So like, we don't talk a lot about basketball on this podcast, right? I'm not really a basketball guy. But how could we not talk about Missouri beating Kansas? Like, we got to talk about that. Number 1 team in the country. They come into Columbia. They get the court stormed on them. Thoughts about that game, Maggie?
I was a little nervous leading up to it because all I kept seeing on Twitter was how it wasn't sold out and all of this like crazy stuff. I'm pretty positive it was sold out and people were just freaking out for no reason. Mm-hmm. But that crowd, I did not go. 2 years ago, I went to that game, okay? And we got curb stomped. Like, absolutely curb stomped. It's like, I'm going to sit this one out and like see what happens. That crowd was amazing. If you were at that game, that was awesome. For 2 entire halves, that place was crazy rocking. And obviously, I think we built up like a 20-point lead at one point in the first half, some 18, 20-point lead. And you could just tell, and I know the Kansas players said that Mizzou fans had nothing to do with it. You did. They had over 20 turnovers. I don't even know how many they had I think within 10 minutes, they had like 12 or so turnovers. it was the home field advantage or the home court advantage that fans can give teams is incredible. Show up for those games, especially if you live in Columbia. I would go to so many more games if I didn't live 2 hours away, and half the games were on like Tuesdays and whatever.
Yeah.
But if you live in Columbia, look at what you did. Like, that was amazing. So yeah, keep going to games, and we've got some more opportunities to get a good little jump before we head into conference play.
It's been really fun razzing some of the Kansas people, especially living on the Kansas side of the state, right near in Kansas City. There's a lot of Kansas fans in Kansas City. That's just how it is. Lawrence is 45 minutes away from the city, so it's like they played their Kansas played their home football games 10 minutes away from where I live. So that's just how it is. There's a lot of Kansas fans here, so it's been fun to kind of rib the Kansas fans a little bit. It's a really good game. It's a great. The Tamar Bates, a guy from Kansas City, was able to put on such a big performance. He joins the lists of some Missouri greats in terms of basketball performances against number one teams. Not the first time they won Kansas team. I believe it's the fifth time in school history they beat the number one team in the country. And that was really, I think, a big thing for me is when you talk about the scope of last year's basketball team. There's some very strong reactions towards last year's team and towards last year's results. Rightfully so. Not winning a conference game, not winning a game in the calendar year of 2024 until this upcoming season, or the season we're currently in, is not great. But I think this was a really strong step in the right direction to kind of right the wrongs of last year. Will people still like be sour about last year? Absolutely. But I feel like you feel a lot better, Maggie. I don't know about you, but I feel a lot better about the direction of the team moving forward following this game.
Well, if you look at a lot of the games last year, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show this year, but Ken Palm wrote an article about how there was no reason that Mizzou should be 0-8. I think they were 0-18 at that point, but there was no reason based on statistics, right? And he was 100% right. I watched every game last year, and it was all these games that we had leads at maybe halftime, and then we lost by a couple. We had a massive lead in this game. I think it got down to 2, maybe 3, somewhere right around there. And then they knew how to win a game. They knew how to close a game. And that's such a big difference between last year and this year's. Last year, they were just young and didn't know how to do that. And this year, we watched it happen, and it was amazing. It was awesome. It's also amazing to have guys like Josh Gray that came over from South Carolina that can rebound the ball, finish the game with 10 rebounds. That was awesome. Just having somebody that can compete with guys like Hunter Dickinson down low, you got to have it. Yeah, it was. I watched it with a Kansas fan. One of my friends is dating a Kansas fan, and a Kansas grad. And I don't think I've ever watched a game directly with a Kansas fan. And I could tell he was being a little bit more calm during the game than maybe he typically would have been. But man, it was sweet. It just felt so good going into it, being like, well, we're probably going to lose. We may as well just have some fun. And I know I shouldn't think that. I know I shouldn't be like, oh, we're probably going to lose. But based on, Kansas coming off of a loss at Creighton, where they also got court stormed, they're still a very good basketball team, have a lot of experience in that room with DeJuan Harris and Hunter Dickinson, just 2 elder players. You just don't know what you're going to get sometimes whenever you go into those games. It was great to see a team that I feel like is finally getting to gel and finally getting, like, we're seeing the development that, Coach Gates and Coach Young are providing. Yeah. And it's cool to see it all come together.
Yeah, I think so too. It was a really promising side, and it's good to wear my Beat Kansas shirt on the Chiefs post-game show after the Chiefs were able to pull off a Sunday Night Football victory as well. And look, this rivalry is getting renewed on the gridiron this next year too. Kansas is coming to Missouri. Jalen Daniels supposedly will be the starting quarterback. He signs a new deal to stay at Kansas, so we will see how that all goes. They have a new offensive coordinator. Things will be very different the next time Kansas comes to Columbia. But Yeah, the court storm, incredible. The shots, the imagery coming from Mizzou Arena that I've seen come out on Twitter. Cal Tobias is one of those guys that I see on Twitter posting the pictures all the time. I think he shoots for Rock M Nation, man. He killing it. The Missouri social team did a great job on all counts of just capturing the moment, capturing everything that transpired there at the game. And look, the new uniforms, I really think is what it was, Maggie. The new uniforms, those look good. Those look clean.
I'm not saying that it's not that. I'm not saying. I'm just so glad I don't have to see that massive black tiger on the bright yellow uniforms anymore. I'm over those.
I was glad that they went with, because I was trying to think of like what the uniform matchup would be. I was like, Missouri wears white. I was like, that'll be fine, but the yellow would look really good. Just the color on color matchup really popped. I think uniform aesthetic wise, both teams did a very good job aesthetically in this matchup.
When I was talking to my friend that is the Kansas fan, we were talking about, we were like, man, they just look like rivals. Like the colors of them battling just look like rivals. You got the blue and red, the black and gold, and it was beautiful. The court storm, it was like melting butter down. Like it was just like the most perfect court storm I've probably seen. It was all over the internet as well about how great of a court storm it was.
Oh, Missouri takes a lot of momentum into their end of the non-con schedule. Missouri, usually does have a tough non-con, especially towards the end of it, especially scheduling both Kansas and Illinois in their non-con, both two teams that are really traditionally pretty good at basketball. They will have bragging rights coming up. I believe they have 2 games in between then, Jacksonville State and another school. They have 2 games. I don't have it in front of me, but they do have 2 games before bragging rights.
Long Island.
Long Island and Jacksonville State. It's exactly who it is. They should win both of those games. What are they? 8-1 now. They should be staring at 10-1 going up against
Fighting Illini.
The Fight in the Illini. Game's still in St. Louis, right?
It is on the 22nd. I think it's at noon on the 22nd. So a Sunday afternoon game. But I mean,
I keep scheduling these games on Sundays.
I know. It's a little obnoxious, but it's fine. They always do the 22nd. So I bought my tickets just this morning. There are still tickets available on Mizzou's website if you have a login. So
there you go. Go support the Tigers as it's a good time to be a Tiger with everything going on in the athletic department as well. Good momentum carrying on. I'm sure we'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on in terms of the transfer portal. We'll break down the Iowa matchup a little bit later. Didn't want to dive too far into it here as we still have a few weeks before we will get into that matchup. But Maggie, any final thoughts before we head out of here?
No, like you said, it's a great week to be a Tiger. I do believe that the volleyball team plays this week. I know they have Kentucky, but I'm not sure when it is. Yeah, you can probably look it up quicker than me.
Mizzou volleyball
at noon on Thursday.
Noon on Thursday, yep.
Yeah, so support your volleyball girls. There's so many good winter sports, really. Gymnastics, which starts a little bit later. You got wrestling coming up. So, yeah, lots of good things to support in Columbia.
Very much so. All right, let's go for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network. For Maggie Johnson, I'm Tucker Franklin. We will talk to you guys next week on Mizzou That's You.